some of our favorite RV bucket list trips and destinations we've done prior to starting the YouTube channel. That plus how we plan and executed those trips coming up next. Welcome back. My name is Ryan.
I'm Lauren, and this is the Millers in Motion podcast.
We have been traveling I've been traveling most of my life. You've been traveling since you met me. A little bit before, but a whole lot after.
Right.
So what we want to talk about in this week's episode, and yes, you heard that right, it's just the Millers in Motion podcast now. If you want to learn why, how, what just happened, go check out last week's episode because we explain all of that in detail there. But one of the things we realized that as we were talking about how we wanted to travel going forward is we always pull from our past a little bit because we don't like to visit the same destination twice for the most part. I mean, that always happens a little bit.
Anymore.
But we try to. Well, if you really love someplace, I understand wanting to go back kind of a thing, but we also want to continually experience more.
Yes.
Tagline to our main YouTube channel there. So we wanted to do an episode just kind of reminiscing, I guess. So we posed the question to each other. That was, what are some of your favorite destinations? And we're going to put some categories to this a little bit.
Oh, boy. Like a game show.
Kind of like a game show. We've done almost every form of travel with the exception of train.
And that was intentional.
Well, from you. So the categories are kind of going to be like what's been our favorite RV destination. Now, full disclosure, that's only going to be during the channel because we started the channel before we bought our first RV to go full-time. So, but we're also going to maybe throw like your favorite cruise destination because we've done a few of those now, and then maybe just general travel, another one. And it can be from prior to us getting together, post us getting together, pretty much anywhere, but we're going to try to avoid, minus the RV one, the stuff that's on the channel now. So this is like never before heard / seen.
Take a trip with us down memory lane.
Pretty much. And then we are going to talk a little bit about how we booked it, why we booked it, assuming we remember, because I don't know Lauren's answers and she doesn't know mine.
I barely know the categories, y'all.
Yeah. So with that being said, we're not necessarily going to go category by category, but we are going to get deep diving in this. So I'm going to let ladies go first. And what's been your favorite trip that you've taken just in general?
That is not a fair question, sir.
Okay. What's the one you want to talk about the most?
So I like a lot of them for very different reasons.
Well, you got to pick one.
No, I don't actually.
Well, you got to pick one to talk about first. We will probably overlap each other a little bit here too.
We will. All right, I'm going to throw this little nugget out there. This was not my favorite trip, but I think this was my favorite surprise.
Oh.
And that was that Key West is totally my vibe. You could have left me in Key West.
I think Key West is a lot of people's vibes.
Oh, my goodness. And yes, so I did not expect that. We were on a cruise, and that just happened to be one of the ports, and I would have gladly stayed there forever.
So let's talk about that trip as a whole very briefly. We're not going to we'll focus mainly on Key West, but so this was a trip that was taken back around 2015, 16, somewhere in there. So before the channel. This was our first ever cruise. It was a Disney cruise. We did it with my parents.
Out of Galveston. It
Was a Christmas cruise?
I think it was a maritime cruise.
Yeah, so I think, I'm guessing a little bit there. And it was a 7-night cruise that hit Key West, Nassau, and then their private island, one of their private islands. At the time, it's the only one they had, called Castaway Key, and then it came back. And it was aboard the Disney Wonder, which is one of the original 2 ships. So it's also one of the smallest ships. Smaller is not always worst, by the way. I actually kind of like the smaller. Spoiler, I actually like the smaller ship a little better, I think.
Yeah.
So that's how we did that. That was one of those things. We wanted to do something around the holidays. My parents wanted to go do something. It's actually one of the last trips my parents have taken where they actually get to go do something.
Right.
My parents are of an older age now, so they don't, like, cruising's out.
And a lesser mobility.
Yep. And so bigger trips for them are a little out. So this trip is a little special to me for that reason. But one of the first stops we made was Key West. So let's chat about Key West.
So we also did this in December. And if you know anything about me, you know that there are 2 seasons, summer and I'm cold. And so I loved the idea that we were going to the warm temperatures while everybody in Texas was freezing.
Yeah, and it actually was freezing that week, if I remember
really
correctly.
Was.
We had a nice storm.
We got on the boat, and yes, you're going to give me, you know what, for calling it a boat, but it's a boat. We got on the boat, and we were in like jackets and long pants and everything.
Yep.
And I could not wait until we got.
I do remember that because I had jeans and my puffy jacket on because I knew I could squish it down somewhere in the cabin because hopefully I wouldn't need it.
But yes, anyway, so we got off in Key West for that first, or for whatever day that was, and I loved that you could just walk everywhere. It was warm and sunny, and it was so laid back, but it was genuine. Like, I really enjoyed Castaway Cay, but it was made up,
Well, it's Disney-ified, and so
it is.
It was a blank plot of land.
Commercial-fied.
Right. Now, and we can talk about Castaway Cay in a little bit. Let's focus on Key West for the moment.
But I was just saying, in comparison, it seemed more genuine, that there were actually locals, actual normal lifestyle there. Right. But anyways, yeah, I just enjoyed that.
So this is one of those that I didn't know you were going to say this. So again, bear with us because I think I'm getting this right. So if I get something wrong, tell me.
Okay.
So when we got off the ship in Key West, I believe we walked down. So my parents they bought a ticket to a trolley you can hop on and hop off that kind of tools around. Because they were still older at that age. They didn't want to walk like we did.
Yeah.
But that is one of the options. We chose to walk because we like it.
We literally walked from the ship to the southernmost point.
Right. So we walked across the width of the island. So the ship docks in right around Mallory Square. We got off. I believe that's the first thing we did is we walked down to whatchamacallit. No, or did we did Truman White House first? I forget the order of what we did things.
This was a hot minute ago. I don't know.
So the things we did, and I don't remember the order, but we went to the southernmost point. There's a picture to prove it somewhere. We did the Little White House, or the Truman White House, which is where Truman used to come to, so they nicknamed it the Little White House. And then we did Duval Street a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we ate lunch off the ship at a restaurant that I don't remember a whole lot about.
But it was just a little local restaurant, and the food was good, and the chickens abound. And
the chickens abound. I forgot about the chickens. I was trying to find Cuban food because it's supposed to have really good Cuban food down there, and I wanted to I didn't try. I've had a Cubano sandwich, but I wanted to have an authentic one and know it was authentic. And so, yeah, that was kind of our mission. We walked. The southernmost point is the southernmost point.
It was there.
It existed. It's cool. Take a picture, wander off. It's a bit of a hike. I don't know how long it took us to walk down there, probably 20 or 30 minutes from the ship. Once you're off the ship, obviously, that whole thing can be a process in itself, and that's very dependent on the ship you're on. But I enjoyed it. I mean, it's fun because when we walked down, we walked past the Hemingway house, and you could smell the cat pee.
Oh,
you don't remember
now.
that?
Come on now.
But that's a thing there.
This isn't smell-o-vision.
So, but that's a thing. Like, we didn't necessarily want to go into the Hemingway house. I don't know. I would have if we had time, probably.
So there was also a charge to it. And when we were contemplating the things we were doing for what cost, that one just didn't rank as highly as some of the others.
Well, and one of the downsides of cruise ships is, and I've said this for a while, you get to visit a city, but a light version of the city.
Sure.
Because you, at the end of the day, have between 6 and 10 hours in port, give or take, depending on where you're at and how long the scheduling. And so we had to try and Mishka's sitting at you over here, and she is dreaming and going to town with her feet. She's chasing some little poor rabbit down in her dreams.
I know, poor bunny.
But you only have so much time, and so you do have to prioritize things, unfortunately, which is one of the things I like about cruising. Also, one of the things I dislike about cruising is you don't get enough time. So,
correct.
So we chose to skip the Hemingway house because we heard it smelled like cat pee, and it did because you could smell it. It looks cool. If you're super into writing and you're a big fan of Ernest Hemingway, I think it's a must-do. We respect it, but it wasn't a big deal to go visit that for us.
It would have been a little bit lost on us in that. So
I can tell you that I traded that for the Truman White House because I love history.
Right.
And that was more engaging for me, and so that worked out. But anyway, we walked down to the southernmost point. We got our picture. Don't worry if there's a cruise ship in town, or even if there's not, there's going to be a line to get a picture.
That's right.
So you're going to be there with about 200 of your closest friends, give or take.
More than that, probably. But.
Walked down there, and then we walked back up, did Truman, the little White House, the Truman White House, which was fun because you got to see, I mean, it's historical, and so it's mostly, think of it like a presidential library, but shrunken version. And it fixated on when he was in the Keys and that kind of stuff. But it was cool to see. There is an Air Force base there in Key West too, so it's actually right kind of next to it. So the Air Force base runs away from it, and it is on the water because I guess presidents get water views. And then from there we did Duval Street, which was just a lot of shopping and restaurants and bars.
Yeah, it was just neat. So, so that little aside, that was my favorite surprise in our travels. But your question was, what was one of my favorite trips?
Oh, I thought, okay.
Yeah. No, that's why I told you.
You're getting multiples.
If you're
I don't get to go
if you're
yet.
going to leave it broad, I'm going to give you very vague answers.
Okay.
I think my favorite trip was Alaska overall.
Okay. So full disclosure, this was going to be my favorite from the cruise side. And so I would have picked it as well. So
yeah, but you said no categories, remember?
Well, I said we're not going to go in categorical order. So I want to hit some regular trips, some RV trips, that kind of thing. But
yeah.
So, okay, let me remember this cruise. So this was 2018. This would have been June of 2018. This was one of the last trips before we started the channel, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. It was.
It was just you and I.
Yes.
So this was on the Norwegian Bliss, which at the time was a brand new ship.
Brand new.
So it was still doing its inaugural cruises up in Alaska. I believe we were on the second ever.
I believe second.
Up there. We ported out of Seattle. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
And then we made the inside passage up. Remind me the towns we hit.
Ketchikan, Juneau, and Skagway.
Okay. And then we also did Icy Strait Point, but that's a sit and look at it go by situation.
Correct.
And one of the glaciers, I don't remember which one.
I don't remember which one.
One of the ones the ships can actually go up to, they spin a couple times and they come back, kind of a thing. So
we didn't get off for those. Some people, some cruises do.
Well, you don't. So there's an excursion where a boat pulls up next to the ship and you can go in, and sometimes they get off depending on the excursion that's booked. You could do that, and then you meet back up with the ship a few hours later, kind of a thing. We just chose to chill and sleep on the observation deck.
That's because they had a wonderful observation deck.
Yeah, so the Norwegian Bliss was actually designed for Alaska. And so it does have outdoor space and a go-kart track. But it also has this huge observation tower that's probably, the front third of the ship or so?
It felt like that, and it's 2 stories tall. And it was huge.
And it wraps around. So it goes around the front, so it wraps around both sides. And it was meant so that you could view Alaska without having to be out in the cold. Because at the end of the day, it rains a lot in the summer in Alaska, and it can be chilly up there. And so they made it that way. Why it's not up there as much anymore, I don't know. Because, well, full spoiler alert, we're taking a cruise on it in 2025. Had to get that date right. And it's our first time revisiting a cruise ship, but we're going out of LA, so we're not going out to Alaska. We're going somewhere else. So
right. And I think I don't really know that there was anything that stood out necessarily, but Alaska was beautiful, it was quiet, it was peaceful. And then one of the ports that we didn't do an excursion. We hiked a mountain by ourselves.
We only did one excursion on this trip.
Right.
Out of 3 ports.
And so just being able to get off a cruise ship with thousands of people, go hike the mountain, and we saw like 6 people. And so
total.
It was kind of isolated, but it was beautiful and it was quiet.
Do you think all the ports being in American cities helped or didn't help? Or did it matter? Or was it just Alaska being the destination?
I think it was Alaska being the destination. I just thought it was beautiful.
Gotcha.
I loved some of it was so very untouched.
Well, because sometimes when people cruise, and I'm saying this as a generalization, not necessarily for us, but when some people cruise, they're hesitant in some ports because you hear about security problems, those types of things. You know, you get panhandlers, that kind of stuff when you get right around the ports, especially like in Mexico and.
Yeah, and I guess I never really had a concern for our safety or anything being pestered in Alaska.
Okay, I would say Alaska because Alaska is very American.
Right, so I did feel very safe. And, in the back of my mind, maybe that did make a difference.
So, yeah, and I mean, like most of the ports, you're not going to have a bunch of touristy stuff. Well, let me rephrase that. You're not going to have a bunch, like when you get off a cruise ship in Cozumel, Mexico, you're inundated with take this tour, go do that, swim with the dolphins, and every tourist trap gift shop you can see that has the same stuff. There's probably 30 cents different as far as the eye can see. Alaska, while there is a souvenir shop somewhere, typically it's normally a little bit of a walk-in. It's touristy, but it's not as touristy.
Right, and it's not as high pressure.
Yeah, well, I also think, too, that there's less ships that come through there because there's a season, so they don't come through in the winter, obviously. And they can only fit 1 or 2 ships in port a day. They can't fit, like Cozumel can fit like 6 or something like that.
Big ships.
So they don't need to have the infrastructure that has. So I think all of those things coupled together. Now, I will say Bliss was on the bigger side of a ship, and so there was quite a few people that got off. Maybe they couldn't sell it. Maybe that's why it's not up there anymore. But I agree with you. I like that we could just get on a side of a mountain and walk up. I think we actually Ubered in that one.
That one, yeah, the trailhead was kind of far away, but in a lot of the other ones, we just walked everywhere.
Right.
Because the towns were that small.
I was going to say Juneau, if I remember correctly. Did we hike in Juneau?
I don't remember.
So Ketchikan's where we did our excursion.
Okay.
So we booked a, what is that little boat called? It's like what the Coast Guard uses. I don't know if it's a tube boat, but it's inflated on the sides, but it's hard on the bottom, and they go really fast.
A raft.
Okay. With motors on it. But we took that out, and they showed us a bunch of waterfalls, and we actually saw some marine life a little bit.
Some wildlife, yeah.
And it's a fast boat, too, so it was kind of fun to do in general because it was a little exciting. We did that for a few hours, and then we just wandered that town, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And then, again, I don't remember which one. We hiked in one, and then the other one, I don't remember
Wherever
what we did.
Deer Mountain is, that's where we hiked.
Yeah. I want to say that was Juneau.
Okay.
Because there was the option of taking the gondola thingamajigger up, and we just hiked, which we were making our way up. And for time constraints, as well as somebody said that the snowbank hadn't quite melted yet, and it was up ahead. So we went back down.
So we're just going to go with that. We don't exactly remember what we did in which towns. They all kind of run together, and it's been a minute.
Yep, but I would say if your Alaska cruises can be a little bit more pricey, but it's, to me, if you're okay with cruising, it's one of those cruises you almost have to do.
It absolutely is. It was a bucket list item. It was very memorable. And I don't know that I necessarily want to do it again. I want to do Alaska in a different way.
Right.
But I'm so glad that we did it.
Like RV it for a few months?
That'd be fantastic. Let's do that. Hey, let's buy an RV. Oh, wait, we did.
Oh, wait, we're living in it and we're sitting in it at the moment. So if you had to give someone a tip going on an Alaskan cruise, what would that be?
Layers of clothing. Well, because there were so many different climates, like realistically. Right. And so sometimes you were really cold, sometimes it was damp, and then sometimes all that would dry up and it'd be sunny. And so layers of very climate.
I was going to say, and take rain gear. I mean, we got very lucky, and we were told that in every port we went to. They're like, this is the best weather.
It was amazing.
Yeah. Also, if you see, like, some people, and we're one of these people, we try to save money by utilizing what's called shoulder seasons. So, like, prime time for Alaska is really July and August. September a little bit, but that starts to become shoulder season because you got to remember, winters, it's much further north. And so winters are a little different up there. We went in early June. I think we were on the second sailing for the season, not just the ship, but also the season.
For the season.
And so, and it was a little chilly in spots, but overall not bad. It helped that the sun was out. But if I can imagine it being gloomy and a little drizzly, it would have been freaking cold.
Oh, I'd have been very sad.
As far as that cruise went, it left from Seattle. There are Alaska cruises that go out of Vancouver as well. We chose Seattle for 2 reasons. One, that's where the ship we kind of went, ooh, that's fun. Let's do that ship because it's brand new, was going from. And then also, it's a little less expensive to fly domestically versus internationally from the U.S. because you end up having to pay your visas and taxes and stuff in it. So your airline tickets end up being a little more expensive in Vancouver, even though it's not that much longer of a flight. On top of that, we had never been to Seattle. Yeah. And so we decided to hang out in Seattle for a day and a half before we got on the cruise.
We don't need to do that again.
No, Seattle's one of those towns that, and maybe we just had a bad experience.
I was going to say, no hate here, just not our cup of tea.
Yeah. It was cool to see Pike's Market. It was cool to walk past the outrageously long line at the original Starbucks and go, hey, look, there it is, and then run away.
Yeah, wasn't that where the Chihuly exhibit was, too?
It was. That was fun.
That was amazing.
So that was over by the Space Needle.
Again, I like pretty things.
Yeah, the Chihuly Museum and the Space Needle was kind of fun.
And if you're not aware, Dale Chihuly does hand-blown glass art.
Yeah.
And it is amazing. It's so pretty.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of his exhibits now, and we typically, if we see one around, as long as it seems like it's worth it, sometimes it's just one piece, but this was a full garden thing that they built for him. He had an expedition. Maybe that.
Maybe.
He had a what do you call it? Crap. Not exhibition. When an artist puts all their stuff on display.
Exhibition,
not expedition.
Edition. Yeah.
It's close. I got close.
Welcome to grammar school, y'all.
At the Dallas Arboretum we went to once too, which that one was destroyed by hail. So big boo boo there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I
Your
hate.
turn.
So I have two that were my favorites, and they're
Okay.
gonna one's gonna shock you, one's not,
Oh boy.
and I'm gonna breeze over both. And
No,
because
you
one,
have to pick one. Remember?
well, so I'm not gonna talk about one, but one of my favorite trips was still our very first time to Las Vegas, because it was the first time that you got to travel, even though you hated the flight. It was fun. Like I knew that we were going to be okay as far as a couple, because this was early in our relationship.
It was very early.
And so because we were able to go off and have fun on our own, I knew that at that point that we were going to be good, because if you can travel with somebody, you can get along with them in almost any circumstance, because travel, especially in Vegas,
Right.
it is just a hotbed for potential fights. Well, not just because, like, when you travel on an airline, you're typically at a level higher of a stress level. So if you can tolerate each other while you're stressed, there you go.
Right.
You know, you're in a hotel room, now you're in a smaller space than you're used to. And you're essentially living with somebody you maybe haven't lived with before, which I can't remember if we were living together yet
We
or not.
were.
Were we? That's the only reason why your family was okay with us being together in the room, weren't we?
Right.
Yeah, there it is. Because we went with your family. So
Yes.
it had its ups, it had its downs, but at the end of the day, I was super thankful for that trip, because I think that got you thinking you could travel more, and which was happy because I love traveling.
Oh.
My favorite trip still to this day, and I love going to Disney. I don't think that's any.
I know.
Yeah. And so I'm going to say our honeymoon, but we talked about our honeymoon in the last episode,
We
so
did.
I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail.
Okay.
So if you want to hear about our honeymoon trip we did, go back and listen to the podcast we did last week. But in turn, I'll talk about, I'm going to say specifically for this reason, when we went to Disney the next time with my parents, your parents, and Amy.
Okay.
It was fun to see Amy experience that.
Yeah, it was.
And I think my biggest shock of the trip was your dad.
All of us felt that same way. This is the man who grew up camping
Yeah.
and was not keen on
No.
planes, travel, people, anything outside of his ordinary.
He was an engineer. Mm-hmm. I forget his actual job title, but he designed.
He was a mechanical engineer.
Okay. So he's a mechanical engineer for a company called Oil States. They design parts and things for oil rigs, specifically for offshore oil rigs.
Offshore.
They do other things, but that's what he did.
You're right.
So he engineered a part that connects the pipeline from the seabed floor up to the rig without, things breaking and shaking. And so it's all these rubber components, but he actually has a patent for this thing.
Right.
And so he's the guy that designed it, but there's computer programming that goes into it, whole 9 yards. He hated traveling so much when he would have to go to these offshore rigs, which he tried to actively avoid as much as he could.
did.
There's a funny story about when he had to have dentures put in.
Yeah.
He was looking over the rail and they may have popped out on accident.
There's a dolphin out there with some real pretty teeth.
Yeah. They would offer to fly him to Houston or somewhere else, and then he could drive down to, I think, Houma, Louisiana is where he used to go out of, get on the helicopter to go out.
Yeah.
And he would say, no, I'll drive.
He would drive himself however many hours it took
Yeah.
to get to the port because he was not flying to that city.
Right. And he was there as little as, like, when can I leave? Like, he'd be there for 4 hours and be like, I'm out. Like, you don't need me anymore. Until they finally let him hire somebody to do all that portion of it. And so, which was great. But it was always an interesting, like, how is he going to handle this? And it was one of those where I think knowing that you wanted to go and Amy, and wanting to see and experience it with Amy
Right.
and you was enough for him to at least say yes to it.
Yeah.
/ your mom made him.
Yeah. And I think that he saw the bigger picture. He wanted to be with the family.
Right.
He wanted to see us experience those things and to be part of that kind of core memory.
And it was a little bit of a longer trip for you guys. That was, we were gone for 5 days, something like that.
Something like that.
Maybe it was 5 nights, so 4 full days, but it was longer than like a quick weekend thing.
Right.
And so, the entire flight out, I think we were all on the same plane too, if I remember correctly.
So we were, but remember, that was the one where I got food poisoning
that's
or
right.
stomach bug.
And my mom got sick too.
I was I was literally in the emergency room the day before.
Yeah, you were.
I was so sick. And so
Jeez.
like going through the airport, he had to carry all my stuff. I couldn't do it. I was doing good to be standing.
Right.
And then we paid for this lovely meal plan that I couldn't eat anything on.
I covered it.
Oh, yeah, don't worry. And I was like, Mickey waffles all week, going strong. But yeah, and then your mom. So there was a comedy of errors.
That was the first time my mom hurt her back, I think. And
Was
so
it?
that's plagued her ever since for the most part. But that's what happens when you get old. That's fun. But we were on the same plane. There was a plethora. Your mom, Amy, and your dad were the only ones that were like normal, healthy-wise. I was fine and my dad was fine. But we obviously were subject to whatever you guys. Mm-hmm. And your dad likes his naps. And I remember getting there. And the entire way, your dad was not smiling.
He didn't smile a whole lot if you didn't know
Well,
him
he
either.
didn't, but you could tell he was a little hesitant on everything. Like,
Sure.
You know how when you're hesitant, you're like, I'll stand on the back of the group. It's fine.
Yeah.
He did that. Mm-hmm. And the first day we get there, so we get there, and Amy was tired from the travel, and this was summer too. So
And she was younger.
She was younger. She needed her nap. Your dad needed his nap.
I needed mine too.
You didn't feel good, so you had drugged yourself for the plane ride so that you didn't get sick.
So I didn't throw up on anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Intentionally. You did it intentionally. And so I remember we had tickets for that day, but you stayed back and rested. Your dad and Amy stayed back and rested. And then my parents and your mom went into the parks for a little bit, and then we came back. We stayed right next to Epcot. So we just went into Epcot for a little bit, came back like 3 or 4 hours later. That next day, I think we went to the Magic Kingdom as a little bit of a group, but then we would, like, Amy wants to do little kid things. We don't care. We want to do the bigger stuff. My parents don't really care to ride all that many rides anymore. So we rode a few together, but then we all kind of separated and met back up for dinner. And when I left, I see Bailey's begging to get on the couch with you. And when we left your dad, he was that typical hesitant. That evening, we see him. He's in a Disney shirt. He shows us a picture of him in his goofy hat. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's fully immersed, grin ear to ear. And I'm like, what has happened here?
Who are you?
And it was like, he was like, we did this, we did that. And I'm like, this is the reaction I was expecting from Amy, not you.
Right, yeah.
But
That's so true.
That whole thing was very memorable. And
It was.
Disney is a unique travel experience.
Yeah. He's taking pictures where they put like Tinkerbell in your hands and on your shoulder and stuff. And he's buying all of them.
They spent so much more money than the rest of us.
The man who was very frugal is buying several Tinkerbell pictures.
Yeah. So Disney's a little bit of a different demon when it comes to travel. Yes, it's still travel at the end of the day, but there's a lot of things with how to get on rides more efficiently, dining plans, no dining plans, too many hotels to even talk about. At some point, we will probably do more deep dives into certain aspects of Disney. It will not be today.
No, not today.
We have talked about it previously in a previous episode, but again, not in the detail it probably warrants or deserves if you're actually looking at planning a trip. So just know that will be coming at some point in the future. So with that being said, 2 more trips.
Okay.
One from each of us.
Yeah.
It might end up being the same one, which is perfectly fine.
Okay.
But I want it to be more RV based this time.
Okay.
So what was your favorite? And this is where I think it's going to be the same trip.
I think you know this one. It's
Elkhart, Indiana. Just kidding.
It was the Smokies.
It was the Smokies, yeah.
So I'm also going to throw this little nugget in there because I can't have just one answer.
Perfect.
You remember when we went to Santa Fe?
Yeah.
Like Santa Fe
Which time?
with the RV.
Okay.
All right. Santa Fe was nice. I enjoyed it. We got to see some history. I got to show my pony. We did really well. There was a lot that went in that. But I think my favorite thing was Klondike. Because Klondike was our old husky who passed away our first year of RVing.
This was his last trip, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so he went and we would walk them every evening. And there was this big square we'd walk them in. And he was feeling it because it was cooler and everything. And we would let him he didn't move very fast. He moved.
He was never he was always a big pup. He was fast when he was younger.
He moved like a potato, basically.
We called him a potato.
We called him a sweet potato because he was big red sweet potato. But anyways, one of us would stand and he would run down the road.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the reasons I say taking the dogs with me on trips is such a big deal because I have memories like that. But anyways, but my favorite trip overall is probably the Smokies.
And I think that's important to remember, especially if you're an RVer, which most people that listen to this initially are, is that, there's things that we do along the way that aren't part of necessarily a trip, which we travel. We're a little different full-timers.
I was going to say, you could just leave it at we're a little different.
Well, we are, but I mean, manual. But we are different in a sense that we travel as much as we can, but we, because of families and age of our family, specifically mine, and your job, we do have to come back to Fort Worth, Texas quite a bit.
Right.
And so we do come here, we'll be here for 2 to 4 weeks. We'll go out for a trip. We'll come back.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we full-time for the last 2.5 years now. And so there's little nuggets of trips like when you showed horses. So like we get out more than we necessarily say on social media because sometimes it's a horse show and we're only there for a night or two. And like Waco, Texas, I'll be honest, I can't make another video about Waco.
We cannot.
And so we've done it enough. There's videos. If something drastically changed, we'd probably do it again, but nothing's drastically changed. Chip and Joanna are still securely in control of that town.
Which is okay by me.
And so there's always those little nuggets at horse shows that we get. But yeah, as far as trips go, Pigeon Forge, which for us was about a week-long trip. We drove from Fort Worth, shocker. We did it in a couple of days, which I'm surprised we didn't do it in one. I think we got decently close.
Yeah, we did.
We stayed in... Did we stay in Pigeon Forge proper, or were we in Seegerville?
I don't remember.
So Pigeon Forge is, on the northwest side of the Smoky Mountains National Park. It runs through that, and then eventually you end up in North Carolina on the other side of the border through the Smoky Mountains. It's nichey.
Yeah, you got to be careful. There are some very neat, genuine things to do, but there are some very Las Vegas things to do.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I would say worse than Las Vegas. There's very Branson-y things to do too.
That's true.
It's a little bit of everything for everyone, but I think that's the beauty of it.
It is
Because there's things like the Apple Barn and like the campground we went to and some really cool breweries.
Which was technically the landing at Pigeon Forge, so I want to say we were in Pigeon Forge.
Well, but there's things named. Sure, why not? We'll go with it. Right. So there's Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, and Searville. I think I'm saying that right. Searville is the one right off the highway, and then when that ends, you get into Pigeon Forge. Pigeon Forge is a little more of the niche stuff. Yeah. And then that gives way to Gatlinburg. Also, for RV size and the road, it acts like a big funnel. So the further down you go, the more narrow it gets.
Very dicey.
There's
in Gatlinburg.
There's no way we would be able to get and we're in a big RV, all the way in through Gatlinburg to the Pigeon Forge. There's
Absolutely
zero chance. So we were trying to find a campground close enough, but far enough away where we didn't have to worry about that. So we stayed at the landing at Pigeon Forge, which is an RVC resort. Loved it. Loved the location, actually.
Yeah, we backed up to the little creek, little river thing running behind us.
That was Little Pigeon River.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if it's my favorite resort, but it's perfect for that scenario.
I think that was one of the first times that the dogs got to sit out on the balcony, on the patio, because we have a toy hauler.
Yeah, maybe.
And so seeing them be able to just sit out there, have our coffee, and watch the river go by.
Right. It was the first time that the weather had coordinated with the picking up of our RV, and we could use the toy hauler space for what it was meant for, and that was to be open. But we did a couple of hikes in Smoky Mountains National Park, which were awesome.
They were.
What was that loop we drove?
Cades Cove?
Cades Cove loop, yep. Which you can bike to. We didn't have bikes with us.
I'd love to bike that.
I agree. I actually do agree with that. We just didn't have bikes with us at the time. Now we've got our fancy electrics that we could go do it on. And then we also did Klingman's Dome hike, which looked short.
You were bamboozled.
Yeah, like a 75% grade. It's not 75% grade, but it is a decent little jaunt upwards. So I remember we're starting that hike and going like, why are there so many benches up this thing?
So you did not do much jaunting.
And then about a quarter mile later, I understood why there were all those benches up there, because whilst it doesn't look hard, it is. Just because it's so vertical, but it is paved. It's a nice little walk up there.
It was very nice.
Down was a lot easier. We did that. What else did we do in Pigeon Forge?
We ate so much food.
Oh God, what was the name of the brewery?
Oh, the Iron Forge.
So if you're a brewery type person that has, and I say that in terms of like food too, I think we ate there 3 times.
We ate there enough that I got a shirt.
We ate there enough they got to know us.
It was good food. We didn't have anything there that we wouldn't have recommended. The beer was good. All the food we had was good. The atmosphere was on point, and that was our first experience with musical bingo.
Singo, which we have taken to. If you've ever seen us in person now, you probably hear us talk about it, which is fun. It's bingo, but with music, which is way more fun than just calling out B12.
It was a lot of fun.
But we did good.
The diner.
Oh, I forgot about Starlight Diner.
I think so.
Something like that. So this was probably the most immersive diner experience I've ever seen, in a good way.
In a fantastic way.
Those diners can be really nichey sometimes. Like think true Americana, like chrome out at the outside of the building. You walk in, think of it like the soda jerks behind the counter, malt shop, burgers, fries, that kind of stuff, patty melts. It was definitely themed that way, but they did it in the right way. Like it screamed 1960s without being, I mean, it's gimmicky, don't get me wrong.
Well, yeah.
But it's not over the top. Like sometimes you do those, like there's one in New York and they sing, and like, it's not any of that.
And the
It's
staff
just,
was dressed up accordingly and all kinds.
but it was kind of, instead of being nichey, it was era appropriate, I think is the best way to say
that's
that.
a good way to put it.
And so sometimes nichey can be too over dramatized. This was just era appropriate. And
Yeah.
so, and the food was actually good.
It was so good.
We wish we had, I think this was our last full dinner there.
Say, this isn't like adequate. This is like, it was really
No,
good.
everything we had was amazing. And so we wish we probably had known it before. The only downside to it is it's so much food.
It was, the portion sizes were quite large.
Yeah, like a burger and fries was honestly probably enough for 2 people.
Yeah, I remember I took half of it because we did leave. And so I took
Yeah.
half of it for my lunch on the road the next day.
That's right. And then we had other stuff from throughout the week too, because we had some pasta thing that I had from somewhere, probably the brewery. We had a lot of stuff from the brewery.
And we did Paula Dean's.
We did. Paula Dean's breakfast was good. I was nervous about the whole you only pick a handful of things, but
Yeah.
to be honest, like for starters, it helps when it's you and I because we get a like. There's a few things that I like that she doesn't, and vice versa. But there's enough of a selection that we hit most of the things. I think we both got something we didn't eat. But it was good. It was great.
Yeah. So,
It tasted like butter.
so it'd been a while since we did a true vacation. I think when we did this one, it'd probably been 5 years since we actually did a vacation.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much is because we weren't traveling for the channel. We weren't traveling for work. We were really relaxing and kind of indulging.
And when she says traveling for the channel, like we film pretty much everything we travel with because if we're traveling, there's an opportunity to shoot a video. But sometimes we have to go to some places like we have to have maintenance done, or we have an appointment with a partner or something like that. And those we don't have much choice in where we're going, how we're getting there, that kind of stuff. This we picked it, went on
Exactly.
it. We were going to go do this regardless if we filmed it or not.
And it was our first national park.
Was it?
Yeah,
On the channel or in general?
in general.
Well, your first national park.
Oh, I guess so.
Because I had been to Yellowstone previously, but
Your
that was
life
with my
before
family.
me does not exist.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just start omitting
That's right.
all of that.
Start new.
This guy walking by outside reminded me of Tony.
I'm really
from
going
the
to have to close
NRBTA
the
real quick.
blinds.
Yeah,
for
you
this,
are. My
aren't I?
ADHD is firing. But overall, we forgot about cinnamon bread.
Oh yeah, Dollywood.
But to say so,
Spent a whole day at Dollywood.
one of the fun things about Pigeon Forge too is that if you are in the theme parks, if you gathered this by the Disney talk earlier, we are. I don't know that I would stay
See, I don't know that we're into theme parks necessarily.
just in the fun.
Yeah, just the fun.
Okay. But we also got to meet up with some friends we had met at the RV Unplugged Season 1 rally that we co-hosted as well. I put it on.
Right.
And then obviously I was a cast member of Season 1. And so we had met Jack and Shelby Tesser from that. And then they had mentioned that they had a place in Tennessee somewhere. And so we were coming through. I said, oh, we should let them know. So we did. They actually came down for a few days in the campground, and we went to, they were our Dollywood Sherpas.
They were. And then we showed them the brewery.
Which, yeah, nothing like going to the brewery, like being in Dollywood all day, eating all the food, drinking all the drinks, and then going, we should go to the brewery again because I'm not hungry at all. But let's do it anyway.
Let's
So
do it anyways.
we did it a lot, which,
No regrets.
yeah, with that being said, if we ever host like a meetup or something, I think I know where it's going to be. But I'm trying to think if there's anything that we would want everybody to know about traveling the Pigeon Forge besides.
I think the biggest thing is that if you have a big rig, getting through Pigeon Forge to Gatlinburg is not recommended.
Well, and even like think about that if you have a big truck, right? So if you have a big toy hauler and you drive a dually around, or just a big, towable of some kind, you drive a dually, it gets like Gatlinburg's going to be questionable.
Sure.
I mean, I squeezed Pearl, our F-350 dually, into the Anakista parking lot down there, which is just one of the general parking lots on the north side of Gatlinburg.
In my opinion, one of his biggest accomplishments.
Yeah, my 100-point turn.
But
to
you
get
got
into
in.
that thing.
I wouldn't have even attempted that.
Well, I had to get in. I couldn't turn around.
That's right. You had no option.
That was an absolute blast.
Yeah.
So All right. This is not meant for long conversation. This is just a little curiosity.
Oh, boy.
If you could take one trip anywhere, and it cannot be something we have scheduled already.
Okay.
So, full disclosure to those of you listening.
He knows the answer to this.
We have a handful of trips out there. We talked a little bit about this before. You cannot reuse the one.
I am reusing. That is where I want to go.
Okay, I'm going to change the question then. RV trip. Gotcha. What would that trip be?
RV trip?
Anywhere, but we're not. She's going to say Hawaii. We know that now. She says it's not scheduled. I'd argue it's planned, just not scheduled. So we've talked about Hawaii before, so I'm omitting Hawaii for you.
Okay.
If you could take one trip anywhere and how you would get there, what would it be?
I'm not going to give you one answer.
Perfect.
I do want to go to Hawaii. I also want to do the Fall Colors cruise.
Yeah, so out of like Boston or New
Yes.
England, somewhere up into Canada, like Nova Scotia, and then back down.
Exactly, yes. And then I would love to do Colorado in like the fall
So
or summer, I guess, maybe.
catching a theme
Not
here.
cold.
Not well. You don't mind the cold as long as there's warmth on the other end of it.
Yeah.
We went skiing in Colorado for a trip. We took your mom and Amy.
I know, and I enjoyed that trip, but I enjoy warm weather more.
Okay. And then if you had one mode of transportation other than RVing that you would want to, I say try. And so if you're going to pick an airplane, pick a version of an airplane. Like, I really want to do a lie flat seat in an airplane. Or I really want to do a train. I really want to do X.
I'm sorry to be a party pooper. I don't care to do those.
What?
Any of those. Like,
Okay.
I'm good. What about you?
For which thing?
Both. All of the above.
So I'm a sucker for good travel. So as far as
Yeah,
like
you
mode
are.
of travel, like I'm that crazy person that enjoys, for the most part, enjoy flying in the right
Yeah.
scenario, depending on my seat partner.
So that was something that took us, 20 years together to realize that our planning style was so different because I was about the destination and he was really, really focused on the travel getting there, that was as important to him. So once we realized that, we've kind of been embracing that.
Well, you put up with a little bit, and I'm the problem is I like the destination too. But once we get there, as far as what we do, I kind of try to leave that a little more to you because I know that you're putting up with stuff on the other end of the getting there portion. So I'd like to do train travel at some point. Sounds like you might be shipping me on a train and meeting me there in the car.
I sure am.
But as far as modes of transportation, all of them, I would say probably the biggest one that I would want to do, that won't happen for a while because it's expensive, is a river cruise.
Oh, that's a good point. I do want to do one of those too.
I'm worried about the size of them because I already think a cruise cabin is small. These are smaller, but I want to do Europe very, very badly.
Yeah.
And so, like, I want to get overseas soon because it doesn't help that Phil and Stacy keep going over there and sending pictures back. If you guys are listening, please don't stop, but also stop. You're just making me want to spend money. That's all that's really happening. But I would say for me, like anywhere in Europe, I'm a sucker for a cruise. So I'd say either the river cruise, like down the Rhine or something, or potentially like the Norwegian fjords, that kind of stuff. So like the Scandinavian countries, but some version of over there because it's so different from what we've done previously.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree.
So, all righty.
But we are going to have to put out an ad for you to have a friend if you're going to do the train travel because I'm not on that.
Okay, good to know that I'm being abandoned.
You are.
Perfect. Well, I think the other side of this is we want to know what your trips, bucket list trips are, or something that you've gone on. If it's something that you've seen us do or not do, we'd love to get suggestions too. Like, what do you want to see and or hear about? We want this to be an interactive podcast as well as the videos. So by all means, please reach out. You can find all of our contact information down in the show notes as well as an ability to actually just text us directly. And then we can try and answer some of those questions on a future show. How you doing over there?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm ready to watch the Green Bay Packers play a football game. So with that, we are going to leave you. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.